Tonight, we're going to talk about misunderstanding your horse's responses. And this is it's like, how many times have we said, I really wish that my horse could talk? And so I was kind of thinking about it. Um some of the lessons I've been teaching lately and stuff. And I think that they are trying to communicate with us, but we don't always, the same as they don't always understand our language, we're not always interpreting their language well. So, some common training beliefs that I think can be true sometimes, but it's not always the case. Energy means my horse is eager to work. Lack of energy means my horse is lazy. When my horse gets strong in the hand, it is because it wants to go more. And when my horse gets behind the leg, it means my horse is lazy. So those are just four kind of blanket beliefs that I think we assume, and they're not specifically what we're going to talk about tonight only, but oftentimes a horse that has a lot of energy, it can be that for many, many different reasons, and it doesn't always mean that they really want to work. There can be nervous energy. There can be food supplied energy and tense energy. So we want to think about that, and we want to try to sense and feel what kind of energy they're coming forward with. Lack of energy means my horse is lazy. Oftentimes, I see it quite a bit with older horses that come out just a little bit slow, a little stiff, need a little more time. These horses may not be lazy at all, but they just need time to open up their bodies. And then the more we start pushing and pumping and squeezing on them, then the more they shut down. And then they do behave a little bit in a lazy way, but these horses aren't necessarily lazy, or maybe lack of energy is coming from some other pain or something like that. So just and you guys know, because I talk about Glorious, but my my Glorious has also been misinterpreted or misunderstood when by my trainers as being lazy, and that was not the case at all. But he's one of those horses that gets very small and gets very introverted if you go after him. But the more that you participate with him, partner with him, and encourage him and tell him how amazing he is, the more he blooms and opens up and tries harder. But even he appeared insensitive, but really he is very sensitive. And I think with somebody who treated him like he was insensitive and went after him, he probably wouldn't have made it as far as he did. When my horse gets strong in the hand, it is because it wants to go more. And being strong in the hand means so many things. And again, it can be that my horse has a lot of energy and then is not interpreting the aids well. But horses that get strong in the hand, it can be because of misunderstanding about what the bit means. It can be about a pain somewhere. Oftentimes, horses that are actually painful in their feet can get stronger in the reins, just trying to de-weight their feet. that just a lack of balance. So it doesn't always have to do with the energy. And sometimes we need to tone it down, to make a little bit slower tempo. Think about if there's a pain somewhere, and then also teach them what the bit means. So much of the time, people we are taught, and we should be riding with our seat and with our leg more than our hands. But when the horse doesn't understand what the bit means, then they block in the rein, and then the seat and the leg is not going to be as effective as if we really teach the horse what the bit means, what each signal means, and then they can respond very quickly, and we can ride them easily on the seat and leg. So when my horse gets strong in the hand, it's not always just that it wants to go and it has energy and it's pulling through because of that. There can be a million and one reasons. And then when my horse gets behind the leg, it is lazy. And again, that behind the leg is a lack of understanding about what the leg means. It could also be that we are gripping. Behind the leg can mean that the saddle doesn't fit, or of course that the horse does have a pain somewhere. But most often, I think it is a misunderstanding. We're not getting in with the aid and then out quick enough. And so then they suck back and they push against the leg or against the saddle instead of moving forward from it. But also can be pain related. Tactics for understanding horses better, specifically your horse. No, Abigail, we're not going out right now. Journal. Write down shoeing, vet work, massage, keep tabs on any blood tests or anything like that you do, food changes, hay changes, if you get a new delivery, these kind of things. Really, even if you just write a couple sentences down about the date and about the change, this is so important because we start to see patterns that we wouldn't normally see if we were just being emotional about the things that weren't going right. So I really like to journal those outside influences. Even little things about the weather and things like that can help you. And then write a little bit, even if it's brief, about your rides, the basic mood of your horse, and how it felt. Even if, again, it's one or two sentences, just to jog your memory, so that you can notice these patterns. If something, I tell this story quite often, but I had a horse that after he was shod would always move like $1,000,000, but in a bit of a tense way. And it took me it was a new horse for me. And, I would think we were building rapport, and I would think that he was understanding my system and we were getting some relaxation going. Not that I don't want him to move, but not like that, chaotic running. And it took me a couple of shoeings to realize that he had quite sensitive soles, and it would take him a couple days to really get used to the new shoes. And most of the horses that I've had in the past, if they got new shoes, they would be a little slower. They would be a little bit careful if they were sensitive. And it's not as often that I have that one that gets really hot because he just got shot. So the journaling really helped me with that because it was a new horse, and the training that we were getting to know each other, and that timing when I could see that repeat happening right after the shoes really helped me to understand. I always give them a little bit easy time, but when they get excited and hot like that, you end up working them more than you would normally. And what I realized with him is, a nice easy hack day, groundwork day, something like that for a couple of days after his shoes. Don't even start trying to do the stuff because it made him too tense. And then I had to ride him down, and then he did more than I wanted. So journaling is a really great tactic for getting to understand your horse better. Come to your rides curious. I think that we talk about this quite a bit in our mindset sessions, and that idea of being curious, not judging everything from how it was yesterday, not having that worry or fear about it not being perfect, but just coming to the ride curious, open, that youthful approach. Don't create a human story. Don't put your horse in your shoes. Put yourself in your horse's shoes. So understanding horses better is going to be about their point of view and not putting our stories into their minds. They really don't think about things the way that humans do. And when we start creating a human story about why they do things the way they do, we will go backward in our training. So think about your horse's perspective. And that can be in every way. How is your horse perceiving his surroundings? How is the weather? What was his day like? Sometimes the horses end up staying in the stall longer because of the weather, or they get cooled, or is the whole barn a little chaotic today? The blacksmith's here, the vet's here. Somebody came with a horse trailer. The horse are running around in the paddock. What is his perspective of the day? And then can you align with them and take some time? What does his body feel like? What does his mood feel like? And then when you come with that kind of an idea, how can you then present the work in the best way, considering how your horse comes out today? I really feel that oftentimes when we ride one horse and we've had it for a while, it can be that we ride the horse that we had 2 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. We forget to come forward. And if we're training every day or going out there and trying to teach our horses something, that the horse is going to learn something. It's good or bad. We want to have the right influence. And then on top of that, what we want to do is we really want to think about that progress that they're making. And even though they all need to be warmed up and they all need to be approached in an easy way to get the muscles going and get the joints going, the work is going to be related to those new responses to your aids, to the way that the horse is coming along and understanding you better. And if every day you feel that that's not working for you, and it's not getting better and the responses are not improving, then we need to take a different approach. But when we are inputting that software into our horses about how to operate with a rider, they should be improving step by step, week by week, month by month. There should be small improvements. We don't have expectations, but we have a system, and we know if we're getting our direct results from our aids that our horse is understanding them or not. So be careful not to read too much into your horse's story and backstory, even if they've had a little bit of a difficult time, even if they've had a little bit of a history that wasn't right, and then you are trying to retrain. That is a little bit longer process. It's true, but I've had awesome horses that have had bad histories that have made really, really great recoveries. And that would never happen if I rode them as if they were the same horse that they walked in the door. So we need to be careful about that. Don't give your horse a human story. And then, does anybody have any questions so far? Some basic messages horses are trying to give us. So it's really just a quick overview. I mean, we could really, really dive deep into this, but I just kind of skimming the surface. But overall, cranky. Some aspects of their day is undesirable. And more than that, it's causing defensiveness and stress. So if you have an overall cranky horse, you need to get curious about why that's going on. I have to say 99% of the time, it is not just the way the horse is. I have had so many horses that people thought that their demeanor and their personality was a certain way. But when we were able to figure out what it was that was bothering them, what it was that was making them cranky, that was making them defensive, then they brightened up and became quite friendly. So food or ulcer related. Most people do not give their horses enough forage. So this is bad overall for digestion, and it can cause ulcers, but your horse might not have ulcers, it might just have pain. So not having enough forage can also increase the cortisol levels and the adrenaline levels, which will create nervous and anxious horses, which will create the situation that they eat even less, even though it's available. So we want to be careful that we monitor the way they're fed every day, that routine. We get into that a little bit deeper later. They can't get their own food. So we want to be sure to feed them something that they enjoy. And this is more complicated than it seems. For sure, some horses are going to prefer sweeter feeds, good tasting feeds, things like alfalfa, things that aren't necessarily good for them. But when we change their microbiome over time, slowly, just like humans, they will crave less sugary food. So our digestive system adjusts to what we're eating. Their digestive system also adjusts to what they're eating. This is why people tell us that we have to change horses' feed slowly. Hello, Danielle. Welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the text or the chat, or in the you can unmute and we are talking about misunderstanding your horse's responses. So we're talking about overall cranky, and food are also related. And then they can't get their own food. So if your horse is getting something to eat that is really bad for it, I personally am of the belief that you should change it right away. If it's causing a disruption, you should change it right away. Uh, I know that many people say, we need to change the food slowly, and as we want to get them on a better diet, take a little bit away of that, start adding a little bit of that. In most cases, I do that, but I have had cases where something was not agreeing with the horse. It had like an allergy to it, or it really was a bad feed that was not agreeing with them. In that case, I take the food, that particular food, away from them entirely and start to replace it. Um, the the thing is that the microbiome is going to set itself up. The bacteria in your horse's gut is going to set itself up for what you're feeding your horse. And so there is going to be an overgrowth of things, of little guys that want sweets, just like what happens with people. And if your horse doesn't have certain uh, bacteria, it will not have as easy time digesting fibers and digesting, like, to get the oats out of the hulls and things like that. So these things we need to be conscious of, and we need to start to understand that I am a fanatic about horse feed. I really try to feed clean organic grains, and then really good stalky Timothy hay. But sometimes people will change their horses over to these Timothy pellets or organic grains, and the horses won't be so interested in the beginning because they're used to getting these really sweet feeds. It's not just oh, well, they want to eat that sweeter feed, but it has to do with how their body is digesting it. So change things over slowly. Try to get your horses on um, clean feeds. And there's a lot of things that we can do to manage that. If your horse is cranky, if it's sensitive to the touch, things like that can really mean that its body is not agreeing with the diet. And feeding them something that is good for them that they won't eat is also not going to benefit them. So you need to balance that out and find something that is beneficial for them, that they like to eat. You don't just throw. I've had several clients that brought me horses in training, and they didn't think twice that the horses didn't eat their food every day. And I said, well, we need to find out what they want to eat. Otherwise, they're not getting the nutrition they need, not to mention the fact that we're wasting a lot of money. So then other things that can make your horse overall cranky. Are they stabled next to a horse who threatens them or is making them constantly on the defensive? Do they stay too much in the stall? Do they not get out enough because they're anxious when they're out, but we haven't tried playing around with a good system for that? Do they stay out a long time but get frustrated with the bugs and then get anxious and use up their energy fretting? So turnout and turnout schedule can really impact a horse's happiness level. And some horses it is being out more, and some horses it is not about being out more. And those horses that do have to be stalled more because they don't like to be out in the paddock need to get out in other ways. We can't just say, well, he likes to be in the stall. Then we need to figure out ways for hand walking and grazing and things like that to get them out of the box. Another thing is the shavings. Do they have enough shavings so that they feel really comfortable to rest? Sometimes cranky horses are because they don't rest enough. Another way you can make your horse cranky is that if you're not giving them a good schedule. Horses seem to be, in my experience, much happier and much more relaxed when they are on a schedule. And the schedule does not actually have to be our typical barn schedule. Some people work. Some people are not available at those regular times like we would think, going in at 6 or 7 in the morning, feeding at 5 o'clock at night. My horses, of course, at lunch and night check, but uh, I've had horses that come to me super skinny, and just because we were so regimented, the hay at this time, the feed at this time, the hay at that time, the feed at that time, throughout the day, 8 different feedings, we didn't even in the end of the day have to increase the feed or the hay that they got. They gained a lot of weight and actually had to be dropped back just because the regularity and the relaxation that their meals were coming. So for people that are working, they can't be there. It doesn't matter. It can be not 9 or 10 in the morning, as long as it's 9 or 10 every morning. It can be 9 or 10 at night, as long as it's 9 or 10 every night. Of course, there's going to be every once in a while mistakes or exceptions, but when you can do that the most regular, your horse will really appreciate it and relax much more into the system. And then crankiness can also be from dehydration. So I was amazed to find that horses will ration their own water. And if I get a horse in training that has not had ample water, it will take it about a week to really start drinking as much as it needs and wants for that kind of a lifestyle. It's very interesting, but they know, and if you think about them in the wild, it does make sense, but they know that if they drink that whole bucket of water and it's not refilled for 24 hours, that's not going to be healthy for them. So they will start to ration themselves. So really be careful. I've had people say, no, that's all they drink. I said, that's not possible that's all they drink. Horses will drink a lot of water during the day. And then also in the paddocks, some horses don't like mosquito larvae in their outside water buckets. They don't like, these bugs flying around or the birds pooping in their water. So that's another thing that can create dehydration. Low level, they're not getting sick, but they're just that low level dehydration. Their fascia gets a little tight. They seem a little cranky when you're riding them. And it can be that they don't drink enough. So fresh water every day, filling up the buckets multiple times. And a hydrated horse is a happy horse. So another time that horses can talk about, show us that they don't like something and be cranky, is when we are putting the saddle on. And again, a lot of people will just say that that's how they are. And I don't think that it needs to be like that. So if I have a horse that starts to be a little cranky about receiving the saddle, then I'm going to check that out. Is the back sore? Is the saddle fitting properly? Is there something else going on? is there stomach problems? Is there muscle spasms? Allergies and food sensitivities can also make the horse so that they don't want the saddle. But aside from that, the state that your horse is in when you're putting the saddle on is really going to affect how they take the saddle and the girth. So if you're tacking your horse up in a really tense area, like there's a lot going on, a lot of horses back and forth, or some kind of work going on in the barn, or even construction or whatever, and the horse is up and tense, the body is not going to feel happy about receiving the saddle. I want my horses to be open and relaxed and receiving the saddle in a really positive way. Then I know that my ride is going to go well. So if I have that happening repeatedly, I will actually take the horse to the ring in the rope halter, and I will work it a little bit without the saddle and get them into that relaxed state. And then put the saddle and work a little bit again with the rope halter, and then put the bridle on and ride them, so that they start to associate that state, that relaxed, open state, with taking the saddle. And I can take, the rope halter, drop the rope on the ground, and walk up with the saddle pad and walk up with the saddle very easily, without somebody holding the horse, without the horse running away, when the horse is in a good state. And I feel that your rides and your training will go much better when the horse is okay about receiving the saddle. So if the horse has muscle spasms, then that needs to be handled. If the saddle doesn't fit correctly, even when you get it into a nice state and the horse is accepting the saddle, it won't feel comfortable then when it's working. So we need to work on those aspects. But the state that your horse is when it's receiving the saddle is very important, and really going to have an impact on how the training moves forward. Not wanting the bridle. A lot of bridle problems are technique. And oftentimes we'll get horses that have been in training barns and stuff like this, and they've had grooms that were a little bit experienced. Maybe the horses are a little bit tall and the grooms aren't really experienced, and the horses just get used to that. They get hit in the mouth with the bits, things like that. I have a very particular way that I like to put the bridles on, and I teach my grooms how to do that. And when they get used to it, they have a lot of success and it works really well. But, not squashing their ears down flat as you take the bridle over, one ear at a time, holding the bridle in a way that helps to stabilize the horse's mouth so that the bit isn't banging them in the teeth. And with double bridles, this is even more important. We also, if they start to really not want the bridle, then we're going to get the dentist and take a look at the teeth and make sure that there's not something going on in there. It can also be sensitivity in the poll, that the horses have a little bit of pain or strain going on in their poll, which makes them tensed about taking the bridle. I bought a horse with a customer one time, and they said, the owner said, oh, well, he's been bad about taking the bridle. That was something that has really been for a long time. It's always been like that. And we just, I don't remember if they stood on a stool or what they did, but the horse would not take the bridle, they said, for years. And when we did the pre-purchase, the vet, which I had not done that much of this at that time, but the vet insisted that we do not just neck x-rays, but pole x-rays. And he had all kind of shrapnel, all kind of changes in his pole where that ligament had been pulled away from the bone. And nobody had ever known. And of course, at the instant when that was happening, the horse probably needed some time off to recover from that. But instead, it just continued and continued. The horse ended up, we did fine with it, and the girl was very successful with it. But she also had a lot of awareness by that time. Nice awareness of to be careful about that. TMJ pain can also be a reason why a horse wouldn't want to take the bridle. Riding them with mean bits is a reason why, and we should try not to do that. Of course, always paying attention to the fit and the tightness of everything. And then occasionally allergies and breathing problems can make the horse, reluctant to take the bridle. Any questions? Um, the next thing and I'm just kind of running, there's many more reasons. I'm just trying to touch on some things that we don't always think about right in the moment that I think we should pay attention if our horse is trying to talk to us and we're not hearing it. So not wanting you to mount, and can be similar to the not wanting the saddle on if there's back pain or any kind of muscle spasms going on in the back. And of course, we didn't really talk about mares and mares being in season, but that's another area where they can be having back pain. Overall anxiousness can be a result of the tack, but it also can be the area, what's going on in the arena and the relaxation level. If the horse has gotten itself into a little bit of a negative state or anxious state and it doesn't want the rider to get on, for me, that is something I listen to. And I might take the horse for a couple more walks. I might do a little bit of groundwork again and see if I can get them. But I teach my horses to come to the mounting block. I like them to stand in a relaxed way. If I have a horse that is difficult to mount, I spend a lot of time on that. It's a priority for me. It'll be part of their lessons until they accept that mounting. And occasionally, I do have a couple clients that have horses that will be really good about mounting most of the time, and then every once in a while, they'll say, "No, wait, I need it," and that's a conversation where they do have a little funny backs. They do have a little bit of confirmation things that can come up in their comfort. And so when they really do say, I don't really want you to get on right now, whether they get moving around or they have that snarky face on, we will go back and we'll do a little more groundwork until they feel comfortable and accept the rider. And I think it's important to listen to that. That's not, I've never had a horse take advantage of that. Either they're working when I'm riding them or they're working in the groundwork. It's not something where I feel like, oh, well, they're winning because I'm going to take another walk around the ring. I think that if we can't listen a little bit to them, then that's how come sometimes people get hurt, is that the horses were trying to say, like, I don't feel right, something isn't right. Even horses that stop, that stop when you're riding them, they get a little bound up and they stop. That horse, when you really force it, might be the one that's going to buck around. And maybe it was doing you a favor by saying, hey, wait a minute, I need a little more time. So I try to listen to those things. The mounting for me, I know I have a lot of, not a lot. I have enough friends who have injured themselves in the mounting process that I have a great deal of respect for that time. And so I approach it very systematically. I do not take it for granted. I I get on my horses at home in the same way I would get on them at a horse show, so that it feels for both of us very systematic, very organized, and I know that my horse will open up, stretch its neck, stand there patiently. I don't have to hold it. It's not running off the second I get in the saddle. These things are very important, that my horse accepts me in the saddle when I get on. And then did something happen recently, whether when the horse was being ridden or during the mounting process, that you need to renegotiate that again? And that's okay. Take time and do what it takes. Don't ignore that. If the horse needs a little extra time, needs a little retraining in that area, absolutely take the time and do that. And then, of course, pain in the back is going to be a big thing. That the saddle not fitting, not paying attention to how you tighten the girth. I always tighten the girth and walk my horse forward, and tighten the girth and walk my horse forward. I never tighten the girth right at the mounting block. I pull the legs out, make, all of those things. Make sure that they're comfortable before you get on. Okay, so some common reactions that you might not expect from pain. Horses that go faster because of hoof pain or stifle pain. Even some occasionally back pain, right? When the horse doesn't want to flex its back and move its back, it might get flat and run along. So going faster, having more speed because of pain, that took me a little while to catch on to. Going slower, or even appearing overly calm from pain. Shaking in the neck. So sometimes horses that shake the neck up and down or side to side can be a signal that the horse's back is getting tired, or if you are just starting with the riding, that the horse's back doesn't feel good, or even that they want to let that back out, and stretch it out. But sometimes horses will shake their neck, and it has nothing to do with the flies or the head. It actually has a lot to do with the back. So having awareness of that is really important. A horse that goes faster because it's tired. And this is, that was a lesson for me, a really big lesson for me, that horses can get really hot when their hind legs are tired and they don't feel capable to carry. And when you have a horse like that, you have to get it fit in a very organized way with interval training, and not hit that point of no return. So many of us are taught to end on a good note. And with a horse that starts really running and getting anxious because it's tired, you put yourself in a really bad spot. So take lots of breaks once you figure out that that's your horse, and try never to hit that anxious time. And if you do, ways that I have overcome it, because some of the horses that I got, that was a habit where after a certain amount of time, they would rev themselves up. You can get off and hand walk it around, and then get back on and do a little more, and then get off and hand walk it around, because they won't even take a break in the walk on a long rein once they get themselves like that. So be aware that that can often be a muscle tired or a physical tired, not actually that they have more energy. Putting weight in the reins, we talked about that earlier. Putting weight in the rein to offset the hoof pain. Not breathing because of stomach or back pain, which can escalate actually into not sweating, and also, sneezing and rooting the reins. So sometimes not breathing is not about breathing, but it's about ulcers. It's about back pain. Back pain is something that can be really complicated because all of these things go together. That vagus nerve is really attached, just like with humans, to their digestive system. So we often don't always know which comes first, the back pain or the ulcer problems. And the not breathing happens because of the pain. And then horses that don't really breathe, don't open in their ribs properly, they're not going to be having all those things going on with the pulmonary function that's supposed to be happening. Those horses will shut down in the sweating. So I've had horses that had habits of not breathing, had habits of not sweating. And what I would do is I would take them out and warm them up for 5 or 10 minutes, and then take a huge break, like a 15-minute walk break, and then start them up again. And of course, the longer they get to know you and the longer they get into a more relaxed program, then the easier it is to get them to open up and start breathing. And of course, you have to relieve the stomach and the back pain. But sometimes that can turn into sneezing, not sweating, and also that kind of naughty rooting in the reins. Rooting in the reins can also be from the stifles not being secure, not being strong enough, and the tight lower back. Horses that go faster when they're not confident. It doesn't seem to make sense. Many people will come and they'll be shocked when I tell them that the reason why their horse is going so fast is actually because it doesn't have confidence and it doesn't feel secure in its feet. But oftentimes horses run from a lack of confidence. Of course, they also go faster when they're not balanced, which doesn't help anybody. And so, again, a really good time to teach them about what the aids mean. Horses are so beautiful, but sometimes they go slow because they're really trying to do the right thing. And they get a little frozen in our perfection of things. So I find it to be very endearing, but sometimes nervous ladies that are riding their horses that, they feel like they can't get them to go, but the horse is really just trying to do everything right and not disturb the rider that's a little bit nervous and tight. So they're not going slow from a lack of trying, in my opinion. Sometimes they're going slow because they're really trying hard. Sometimes overly sensitive horses can appear extremely insensitive. So I have a theory when I ride. I have a belief that when I ride, that use as much of an aid as necessary, but as little as possible, and always try to go back to neutral in between. And a sensitive horse will appreciate that. If we get stronger and stronger and we feel that we have to use a big aid, and then the next time we still go after them with that big aid, that sensitive horse will all of a sudden seem like the dullest horse on the planet, but it's sensitive. Spooking from overwhelm and like a hypersensitivity to the aids. So if you have a really spooky horse, you need to slow things down for them. Explain things very carefully. And what I like to do with a spooky horse is teach them about the aids, teach them about the reins, teach them about the legs in an area of the ring where they feel really comfortable. Because a horse that's not listening is going to get to that place where it's scared and just do all the wrong things. Whereas if it understands, go a little forward, go a little this way, but flex a little that way, then we can have that conversation and we can ride them through that scary area. But when they're blocking themselves off from the riding, or they don't understand the riding, then the spooking will escalate. I think that's it. Does anybody have anything to add to that list, or do you have any questions? You're welcome to jump on. I have a couple of questions. I will email the notes to you, and at the end of the notes are a couple of questions that I would love, if you have the time and the interest through the week, to email those back to me. I would love it. And what are some behaviors your horse has that you're curious about? What stood out to you about the most about what we talked about tonight? And is there anything that you might listen to differently now after this conversation?